Welcome to this rapid revision video looking at the reasons why people supported the Nazis in the early 1930s. In a previous video we had a look at the effects of the Wall Street crash, and that's a big part of it. But here we're going to do a bit of a deeper dive into how the Nazis targeted individual groups of people and why so many of them decided to vote for them. First, let's remind ourselves of the levels of increasing support for the Nazis. Against the backdrop of the Wall Street crash and rising unemployment, the Nazis increased their share of the vote. In the 1928 election, the Nazis had only got 12 seats. In September 1930, they had raised this to 107, but their real triumph came in July 1932. Here's how the Reichstag looked at the end of it. The Communists had 89 seats, the Moderates or Socialists, the SPD, had got 133, and the Nazis had stormed into the lead with 230, becoming by far the biggest party in the Reichstag. But still they were struggling to find other parties to form a coalition with, and ultimately Hitler didn't want a coalition, he wanted complete power. So why did the Nazis succeed in this election? Firstly, let's consider working class or left-wing support. In truth, the Nazis never dominated working class votes. They were more often voting for the Communists. However, some workers were attracted by the promise of work and bread. The Nazi name, National Socialists, was intended to attract working class votes. Also, some frustrated young men were attracted by the order and comradeship of the SA. Where the Nazis really did excel was in attracting middle class and right-wing support. The Great Depression and government tax rises had hit the middle classes worst. There was great fear of a communist revolution, like that which had happened in Russia. Middle class people stood to lose more if this happened. Conservatives objected to some of the new fashions and social trends of the 1920s in Germany. They wanted a return to traditional values. Farmers had been put off by early policies arguing for the confiscation of land, so the Nazis dropped these, with land belonging to Jewish people being targeted instead. The Nazis made promises to big businesses, securing funding and newspaper support. But then there were some policies and reasons which actually appealed to both right and left-wing voters. People had lost faith in moderate parties, and people were frustrated with continuous elections and weak coalition governments. And there were many anti-Semitic Germans across society who, actually sadly, were attracted by the Nazis' racism and anti-Semitism. Another reason was Hitler's personal appeal. Hitler and the Nazis were well aware of this appeal. However demented and disgusting his ideas are to us, he was a powerful speaker with a talent for whipping up a crowd. It's tempting to watch Hitler's speeches with his screaming and arm movements and think that they look utterly ridiculous. But that doesn't let us into the mindset of the 1930s in Germany, where actually many people found this quite impressive. His image was everywhere, with the simple and distinctive imagery of the Nazis' logos such as the swastika, and his personal distinctive appearance making him memorable, with the small toothbrush moustache. His message was consistent and tapped into people's fears and emotions, which was a very powerful motivator for voters. He wanted to scrap the Treaty of Versailles, blaming it for many of Germany's difficulties. And he claimed that only he could restore law and order to Germany's unrest-filled streets, the irony not being lost that much of that unrest was being caused by his own SA. Some, probably a minority of Germans, actually saw some appeal in the SA as well. Hitler's claim to want to restore law and order was both ironic and hypocritical, given the Sturmabteilung. This could be problematic to some, especially middle-class Germans, as they saw SA people starting fights in the streets and raiding communist meetings. However, the brown shirts and uniforms of the SA symbolised an appealing order and organisation. The SA projected an image of strength that suggested that the Nazis would stand up to Germany's enemies. The SA could also disrupt communist and other opposition meetings. They numbered 400,000 by 1930 compared to 130,000 in the communist equivalent, the Red Front fighters. Clashes could be deadly. In 1932, 18 people died in a political riot. They also used intimidation in elections. They tore down posters, disrupted speeches, and bullied candidates. The Nazis were also careful to appeal to young people. Even though they couldn't yet vote, the Nazis targeted young people knowing that they might be the future supporters and that they could influence their parents. Many young people found the violence, colour and noise of the Nazi rallies and SA parades exhilarating. They found Hitler's speeches both convincing and exciting. Nazi youth programmes, including the growing Hitler Youth movement, attracted children and offered belonging in the Nazi Party. Hitler ultimately realised that young people were much easier to mould in terms of their minds than people who had already made up their minds as adults. The Nazis made efforts to appeal to women too. Nazi ideas suggesting that women should give up newfound social freedoms from the Weimar Republic often made women reluctant to support Hitler at first, as did the Nazis' violent image. However, as the struggles of the Great Depression hit, Nazi promises to support families became increasingly relatable, as is shown in this poster. Many more conservative women were always suspicious of the changes for women in society in the 1920s, and the Nazis offered a return to older values that they found quite appealing. As we have seen, there are many reasons why people supported the Nazis in the time of the Great Depression. But consider this interpretation by historian John Toland. He wrote this in his book Adolf Hitler, published in 1976. In 1930, he, Hitler, was offering something new to the Germans: unity. He welcomed all. There was no class distinction. The only demand was to follow him and his fight against Jews and Reds, communists, in his struggle for Lebensraum, living space, and the glory and good of Germany, as he saw it at least. Though working class support was often weak, the Nazis appealed to working class people who wanted work and a better life free from unemployment, middle class Germans who had lost savings, faith in democracy due to the Wall Street crash, and anyone who feared communism, and anyone who blamed the Treaty of Versailles for Germany's problems. Young people who were excited by change, and women who opposed a more liberal, changing society. The Nazis understood the power of their image, the SA, and most of all Hitler and his speeches. So considering this, how far do you agree with the interpretation that the Nazis were trying to attract everyone? Certainly the results of the July 1932 elections suggest that they were having some success with this. But Hitler still was not in charge of the Reichstag, and he was still not leader of Germany. Other things would have to happen first, and we'll look at that in the next video. But for now, that's the end of this video. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope it's been useful to you. If it has, please drop the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more. But for now, thanks very much for watching, and goodbye.